a lot of people may not know, but I used to work for you and your dad up here for about 10 years at Raney Recording Studio. And my favorite job I've ever had, actually. So,
well, we sure enjoyed having you, and I tell you, I miss you. We sure had some great times.
Yeah, but boy, the times have changed, hadn't they?
Oh gosh, it don't even resemble the same landscape.
I know. Used to, when 30 years ago, when you and I were both young guys, we used to kind of snicker at your dad, when he'd tell us how things have changed, and
right.
not for the better, we'd kind of,
Right.
Now we're the older guys, like, complaining,
right,
about everything and where the industry's going, and
a lot of that makes sense now, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah, it does. But you and I were talking about AI earlier, and we can kind of jump into that if you want to for a minute. Just
all right.
Discuss our thoughts on it. And I know you were playing me some demos earlier that had been done with AI, and it's really scary where that stuff's going now.
Yeah, because it used to be, it's like, well, that's AI, and the quality wasn't very good. It's not the case now. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good enough that it's a little scary.
Right, and it's only getting better every day. So
and
it's
that's
even
the
scarier.
thing is it will continue to improve.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And so it's definitely had an effect on the industry.
Oh yeah.
I know when I started here working for y'all back in '95, January I think is when I officially come on board. And
goodness.
I was building cassette masters mostly at that time. Mm-hmm. I'd get off school at technical college where I was going at the time, come up and build masters for maybe 4 hours till 7, 8 at night. And
right. I remember it well.
Yeah.
You did a good job.
Well,
you learned quickly.
Well, it was all analog back then, or at least, of course, cassettes are analog anyway, but we dealt mostly in analog stuff at that particular time. Digital was just kind of becoming a thing. With the old DAT machines, that was kind of the top of the line at the time when I started in here.
I'm glad that format didn't last very long because it was not very durable.
Yeah. And we thought it was great at the time,
We did because it was so clear and clean. You didn't have to worry about the noise.
Right.
And it was really a step forward, but the longevity and the durability of the media itself proved to not be very good. So I'm glad that format didn't last long.
Yeah, me too. And then also at that time, I remember ADATs were kind of a thing. They were affordable enough that some people could afford them in like a Mackie mixer, and then they had a studio, quote unquote studio.
Right. It was all driven by cost,
Right.
You could get a fair recording with it with not very much investment. So, of course, that's what's going to, the dollar always drives that. It always does. Doesn't mean it's better, it just means it's more affordable.
Well, I remember it was kind of a shock hearing some of the stuff that come off of the ADATs and Mackie setup or ADAT and whatever back in the day, because I was used to hearing high quality stuff, at the time. Like we were talking probably the late 80s through the 90s and into the early 2000s was probably the peak of the...
Yeah, in my estimation, I think that was really when it all come together, just the production and the production ideas and the recording quality. It really all come together during that time. I think that was really the best age of recording anyway.
Yeah.
And of course I like the music from that era personally too.
Yeah.
Maybe it was my age, but I can go back and listen to it and it still sounds good to me even today. So I think there was something to that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
And of course, most of the multi-track that we grew up on and loved was done on analog. Right. 2-inch machines.
Right.
Through an analog console.
Mm-hmm. Fat and warm.
Yep. Yeah. And then here come the first generation of digital stuff. Sounded pretty cold,
Yeah, it was pretty thin and just
harsh sounding.
Yeah, it was kind of harsh. It just didn't have those nice, warm, fat pleasing tones that we were accustomed to.
Right.
And a lot of that, looking back, was I think the issue was they didn't have very good A to D converters, but they have since corrected that.
Yeah.
And it's pretty good now.
Well, I know back then, I think the highest you could do back then was like 16 and then 16-bit.
Yeah.
44.1 or 48 was the very top of the.
Right. Right.
Which didn't seem to make a lot of difference.
No.
Maybe a little bit. But.
Yeah, very little.
Yeah.
Most of the stuff I cut now, I cut at 24.96.
Yeah.
I've tried the 32. I don't personally like 32 because it becomes too dynamic. Then I end up having to process it more, to get it, in the range that I need it in. Whereas at 24, it is automatically there. So I personally like 24.96 the best.
Yeah.
Yeah, and ironically, it starts to sound like analog again because you get those really open transients on the top end, and it's got plenty of dynamic range, and the fidelity of it with the really good AD converters that are built now. It's that's the new standard.
Right.
And ironically, like I just said, it starts to sound like high-end analog again.
Yep.
So I think maybe there were some things about back then that they really had right, but again, driven by the dollar. You could buy a roll of 2-inch tape for around $200, and you could buy a hard drive to back up your tracks on for about $200, where you could only put at 15 IPS, you might get 8, 9, maybe 10 songs if they were short on a roll of tape, and the hard drive you could put 50.
Yep.
So monetarily, it's not hard to figure out what's going to happen.
Yeah. Like say the dollar.
The dollar always drives it. It does every time. Which, going back to the AI, I'm afraid that's going to drive the industry too, because it's going to be cheaper in a lot of ways. So not better, just cheaper.
Right.
So
that kind of leads me into wanting to lead the discussion this way too, is where the industry is heading. I know 20, 25 years ago, when digital, became more affordable as far as people being able to buy. At that time, most everybody had a home computer. Seemed like that was becoming a thing where almost everybody owned a computer. And then they come out with, what was it, the Digi-01 first?
Right.
From
DigiDesign. DigiDesign, right.
And I know back then we discussed where it was heading, because then it was becoming where everybody could have access to multi-tracking something.
Right.
Not that it was going to be better.
Well, they essentially had the same software that I'm using. It was an LE version, limited edition, but it essentially would do the same thing for way less money. Of course, the preamps weren't as good, so there was things about it that wasn't quite as good. But if you're just cutting demos, which is what it was designed for, is for cutting demos, maybe capturing your song ideas and that sort of thing. But of course, it's going to always get used. It's like, oh no, I'm cutting masters with this, and of course you never will.
Right.
But convincing the public of that is another thing. So,
yeah, which brings me back to the things that people don't learn when they kind of go about it themselves. At least most people don't, because they just don't have access to anybody that can teach them.
Right.
Because when I started out, my first recorder was a Tascam Porta 3.
Porta 3.
Yeah, and then a couple of years later, I upgraded to the Porta 7, which was and double speed.
And I'll have to say that the first recording that you brought to me, I think you brought it to me wanting to get some cassettes made. And you said, well, I recorded this in my bedroom with a Porta 7. I'm like, what is a Porta 7? Oh, it's a cassette multitrack. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And it was pretty good. Of course, that starts with somebody that, one, has an ear, and two, has some talent, and you had both. So what you brought me, I was stunned at how well you did with it. And I thought, gosh, what could this guy do if he actually had some real equipment to work with? So then the next step, you come and started working with us, and And yeah, like I said earlier, you hit the ground running. You know, it didn't take long to teach you. You were able to do some really fine work in mastering. And
well, I had good teachers.
Well,
you and your dad, I have to give him credit too.
Yeah.
He gave me a lot of good training.
Yes,
Give us both good training.
he did.
But you know, that's back to what people probably don't learn when they go about it. The way that most people have to.
Right.
Most people don't have access to working in a big
Right.
studio.
Right.
But when I came here, I remember I had a Digitech reverb I was using in conjunction with my Porta 7. I never could figure out when I was doing it on my own, like, why can't I get my reverb to sound like records, and
Right.
stuff. And that was one of the first things you taught me was, well, that reverb is calibrated.
Right.
The big studios calibrate that reverb
Yeah, it's
to the song
based on the beat per minute.
based on the beat per minute.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
And just stuff like that,
Yep.
And you guys
That's why it was always the correct size for that song at that tempo.
Yeah, in time with the music.
In time with the music, and
Right.
and of course that's that's how you get that first professional edge, is being able to do that. It's not hard to do, but if you don't know to do it,
Yeah.
then you don't do it.
Yeah, and actually mine, you couldn't even go in and change the presets.
Right.
It was just what it was.
Yeah, it just had presets. It didn't have adjustable.
Yeah. Yeah, all I could do was, turn down the return or something to get a little less.
Right.
But the timing of it was still off, a little
Right.
bit.
Right.
But,
And then later on, you upgraded that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And another thing I learned was using a spectrum analyzer.
Yes.
You can't always rely on just your ears.
No, well, you find that you're not nearly as accurate as you think you are, and because you're dealing with different pieces of music, and sometimes even different genres, and in different ways that music is created, and then next, probably even more of an issue is ear fatigue.
Yep.
And which that depends on the person, and it depends on the dB level that you're listening to it, and trying to stay accurate with that is tough.
Yep.
And it takes a while. Everybody kind of has to figure out their own method, of how loud they need to hear it to be able to hear all of the frequencies in the piece versus too much of it, and cause ear fatigue.
Yep.
And then also being willing to, to give yourself a break, an ear break, and walk away from it for a minute. So when you come back, hopefully you end as strong as you started.
Right.
Is of course that's what you should strive to do. That's what I've always tried to do. Not saying I always did it, but at least gave it my best effort.
Mm-hmm. And for those watching that don't know what a spectrum analyzer is, it's a graph, an LED graph that gives you a visual representation of the frequencies that you're hearing.
Right, right. And once you understand what an NAB curve is supposed to look like, if you get the curve looking right and it sounds right, you are right.
Right.
And when you go back and you review each one of your mixes, you'll be very consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Very consistent. So in mastering, it's not hard to make small adjustments to get the record where it all sounds like one piece.
Yeah.
Which should be your ultimate goal in mastering.
Yeah. But yeah, it was just an interesting time, and I miss the analog days in a lot of ways.
Yeah, me too.
Because there was something about, I've done it with you too, but me and your dad would be in here with the old Atari machines, and
Right.
I'd help him, line them up with oscilloscope, and
Right.
and I'd be watching the VU meter while he adjusted,
Right.
on the machine and stuff, and
Yeah.
demagnetizing them, cleaning them. It was
A lot of work. Yeah.
a lot of work, but it was fun. The sound in the end was worth it.
Oh yeah, yeah. It really the fidelity of those machines recorded to properly and set up properly. I don't know that the fidelity could ever be beat.
Right.
It could maybe be matched, but I don't know that it could be beat.
Right.
And that's the matching has only been recently. So they definitely didn't do it in the first couple of generations of digital,
no.
but the last generation or so, I'll take my hat off to them. They've gotten a lot of stuff right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoy using Pro Tools. You know, it's a solid platform to work from.
Right. I know probably our concern, you and I, you know, wanting to see recordings be what they once were and be good.
Yes.
You know, the thing I know you and I think about, worry about is where's it all going now with the AI technology, and a lot of that stuff is modeled off MP3s that people feed into the model or whatnot, you know, and so you're starting with an MP3 and then what you get out of it, you know.
Yeah, it's basically a peeled back version of the master.
Yeah.
You know, at least a WAV file is not data compressed, where as an MP3 that's what they do to make the files smaller. They compress them, and of course you got to get rid of something to make those files that much smaller. Mm-hmm. And the fidelity goes with it.
Right.
So,
and it can never be better than what you got right there.
No, you know, that's what's kind of disheartening about the whole thing these days is we do all this high definition recording and really do all this work to get it, you know, just to be pristine, and then ultimately it gets peeled back to an MP3 to be you know, put on the internet, you know, because the CDs have really fell off the last couple of years, and you know, even at 16-bit 44.1, which is what the specs for a CD is, it still sounds worlds better than the best MP3 that you can make. You know, if you put them A, B side by side, there is no comparison.
Yep.